Welcome to the next lesson of Japanese 101. I don't know what lesson it is. That one I didn't check. I should have, but I didn't. I know what the title or the topic of the lesson is, though. The topic of the lesson is, I have something in my eye. No, that's not the topic of the lesson. It is Hazu and Becky. There we go. I have fixed myself. Ladies and gents, we have in the past talked about such things as, let me adjust this one. We have in the past talked about things like must do. If you remember that, we talked about stuff like nakute wa naranai and nakereba naranai and stuff like that. So those are the one must do. So today we're going to talk about two very important words that fall into a similar category in terms of what they express. And that's going to be hazu and Becky. So we'll start with hazu, and then we'll look at Becky. As a broad overview, these are basically words for expressing how something should be. Hazu Becky, nice. Hey Nana, how you doing? These are words that are mostly used to express what things ought to be, like what they should be, what you think they should be, or what someone ought to do, what they have to do, what they're obliged to do, or something like that. Or not obliged, sorry, obligated, I would say. So let's start with hazu, okay? Now, first of all, when we talk about when we talk about hazu, which will be our number one topic, hazu, it's important to mention, is a noun, okay? So it kind of behaves as a noun. I also have a slightly different setting here for my pen. I hope it's going to be all right. Maybe we will make this just a tiny bit smaller so that I can write more comfortably. So hazu is a noun, okay? So that's how it's going to sort of act and / interact with things. Hazu generally shows, it shows sort of like a very strong assertion. So let's do like strong assertion. Okay? Must be or should be. Something like that. Must be, should be. For example, when I'm saying like, oh, it must be whatever. I don't even know what time it is in Japan right now, right? But that would be an example. For example, if we do like JST time, then I'd be like, oh, it must be 2 a.m. in Japan right now. Then I could use hazu to express that. We might look at an example sentence like that. But just to give you an idea of what kind of like must be I'm talking about things that you're very certain of. Like you believe that to be the truth. Like you think surely that must be it, right? Sort of this like surely kind of thing. We can also add that here maybe as an extra thing. Sort of surely, right? Surely. So you're pretty certain. Let's look at how hazu will connect to other words, okay? So hazu, as a sort of noun, it behaves like a noun, and it can, okay, wait, what does it say here? Oh, okay. Since it behaves like a noun, it basically attaches to other words just like nouns do. So in this case, we have our lovely 4 categories, which is we have other nouns, we have verbs, we have and adjectives. So that's all 4. So let's look at how that works. So first we'll do nouns and verbs. For nouns, well, if you have a bit of an intuition, you might already know what's going to happen. If I say hazu behaves like a noun, well, the general way of linking nouns can attach to anything basically. Not to adverbs by definition. You know that the general way of doing that would be with no, and that's exactly what happens. So we have no hazu, okay? No hazu, okay? So use no hazu, noun no hazu. So an example of this would be something like, honki no hazu, or something like that. Though honki could also be an adjective. It's kind of both, so it doesn't really matter. We could also use inu no hazu or something like that, which you would usually use this to say that it's like supposed to be a dog. My inner weeb is getting excited. Ooh, nice. That's the best. That's the best part of it, I guess, is all the excitement, isn't it? Now the next one is verbs. Verbs is very simple. I need to turn the smoothing down. That's the issue. 10% is more than enough. Verbs. Yeah, this is a little bit better. For verbs, it just kind of attaches right after them. If we're going to be very specific, it actually attaches to the rentaike of verbs, and the rentaike is the attributive form. But we're in luck because the rentaike in modern Japanese is the same as the dictionary form. So I will not even bother. I will just say like dictionary form, or you know, you can try and remember rentai, but it's the same form that you would have in front of any other noun. So if you know how a verb attaches to a noun normally, you will know this as well. So I'll just for the benefit of simplicity, I can't talk. For simplicity, I'll just add like dict as in dictionary form, right? So I'll have dictionary form and then just hazu, okay? And that's it. Next we have adjectives. So I'll do a little separation here. For e adjectives, okay. For e adjectives, it just adds straight after, just like any noun would. I love the dictionary form, nice. So for e adjectives, it just adds directly afterwards. So you know e adjectives all look like this. There's some sort of adjective and then e at the end, and then it just adds like this, hazu. Hazu. Lastly, na adjectives. This is also very straightforward. It's simply the adjective with na and then hazu. Let's maybe do a quick example for all of these three, since we kind of like went through them really quickly. One for verbs, obviously it's easy. Like you could say something like tsuku hazu. Tsuku as in to arrive at a place, right? Which if I can kind of do that, would look like this, right? Tsuku hazu. Tsuku hazu is supposed to arrive. It's like saying, surely it's going to arrive, right? For example, もうすぐ着くはずだよ. We are supposed to arrive soon, right? Like, surely we will arrive soon. So that would be that. An example. Ooh, this is a big eraser. There's a big eraser. Say big onion. Oui, sorry. Oh, the onion. Okay, there we go. Wow, how exciting. E adjectives are simple. We can use something like e. E hazu. Hazu. E hazu, for example. It's supposed to be good. E hazu, right? It's supposed to be good. That would be that. Very simple. I'll just get rid of that. And na hazu, it'd be like our, I guess our go-to would be something like kantan, right? Kantan na hazu. Kantan na hazu. There you go. Ii hazu ga nai. And that we're going to talk about that as well, yeah. Keep looking at how it looks on the screenshot now. How does it? Oh, Jesus. Oh, no. Oh, no. I will fix that, okay? I'm sorry. For those of you that are wondering what happened to the font, that's one thing I forgot. I was resetting my Windows today, and I do not have the font installed that I used to use. So I will fix that after the lesson. So we can quickly restart OBS, and then we'll be golden. So, as a quick side note also, for negative verbs, they basically behave like e adjectives, okay? So negative verbs, you can just have the verb nai, right? Nai and then hazu. Because they for all intents and purposes behave kind of like e adjectives. So the same rule applies here. Nai hazu, okay? So that works. The same is true for negative e adjectives. Oishiku nai hazu. And you can also have janai hazu. So when you have like a noun or a na adjective, you have something, something, something. Janai, right? Janai hazu. Sorry for the spell, for the handwriting here, but you get the point, right? So it just attaches like this. Nai hazu nai, hazu ga nai. Yeah, we can go over like negatives and stuff like that. Actually, I do plan on doing that, yes. So let's look at some cases for how this will work out, right? So I'll show you example sentences and we can analyze those sentences in our infinite wisdom. Can I maybe switch to my text tool? There we go, thank you. What did I do? I added a text layer, but it's broken to hell. There we go. Nai, nakunai, dictionary form. Perfect, beautiful. What do we have here? Okay, so this one is pretty good, I think. Actually, I will type them by hand because it's not that much longer, and usually I end up just having to delete hiragana anyways. So our settings were like 36 at least. Maybe it was more like 48 points. And I was using... Oh gosh. No, I think my fonts should still be here. Which one was I using? I was using one of those Kyoka Shotai, but I don't quite remember. Probably this one. Should do. So, yeah, this is fine. Koko ga... what is this? Okay. Takara... Koko ga takara no ari ka. You do have to type it properly. No hazu da. So what does this mean? I will make it bigger, by the way. It's too small, 60. This is good. I am fine with this sort of size. Alright, let us move this layer on top of it real quick. So, what are we looking at here? First of all, I'll put some hiragana just for your convenience, right? Takara, arika. Oh, I guess the ri is already there, so. Arika. Real quick, arika just means the place where it is. So this just means like the place where it is. And takara means treasure. 虫たちが永遠に、虫たちが永遠に若木? Is that 若木 or like 200目若木っていうゲームをご存知でしょうか? I don't know that one, no. So what does this say, right? ここが here 宝のありかのはずだ. So this no, here you can see no hazu because it's a noun, right? This is a noun, so we have no hazu. And then da followed after sort of to finish the clause. Nutakara, very good. I'm proud of you. So basically this translates to this or here, right? This is where the treasure is supposed to be. This is where the treasure is supposed to be. Now, let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about what this could mean depending on the situation, okay? Now, you can say this when you're really certain. So you can be like, oh, yeah, I'm certain this is where the treasure is supposed to be. However, you can also use this phrasing for expressing how surprised you are that a certain outcome didn't happen. For example, if you are looking for treasure and you are at the place where you really thought it would be here, but it's not, then you can also say, ここが宝のありかのはずだ. Like, wait, this is where it was supposed to be, right? You can use this to sort of express how certain you were and how surprised you are that it seems to not be true, right? So this hazu, while it expresses certainty, that doesn't mean you can't use it anymore when it's been proven to be wrong, right? On the contrary, nanoni or at nanoni, yeah, nanoni, hazu nanoni shows even more sort of this disappointment, this sort of thing like that it went completely against your expectation, basically. I think we once talked about noni or nanoni, but I'm not sure if maybe we did, but yeah, even though. So you can use hazu sort of in hindsight to say like, but I was so sure, right? Like I was so sure that it was here. ここが宝のありかのはずだった. Also, that's another one. はずだった. If you have something like in the past tense, this is where it was supposed to be. You'll often see the da here turned into a datta past tense. Right? This is what you'll often see as well. You can obviously replace da here with this or also deshita. That is fine. That does not change anything grammatically about the sentence. I read today that in Okinawa, hazu doesn't have this strong meaning. Oh, that may be true. I'm sorry. I'm not a big expert on dialects. So I tend to just stick to my bread and butter, which is generally hyojungo. But if you have an article about that, I'd be interested to see it. I mean, that could very well be true. So that is one example of hazu. Now let's look at some examples of hazu that use verbs. I mean. So I'll delete this and we'll go with 彼はすぐ戻るはずだがすぐ戻るはずだが We'll switch out of this. Okay. So now we have a verb, right? You can see here is our verb, and immediately followed after with hazu, just like we said earlier that it would be. So we have kare. For a second there, I forgot how to spell. This is not legible. I noticed that. 彼はすぐ戻る. Let's do it properly. I learned that you're supposed to do it like this, right? すぐ戻るはずだが. Here we also have a ga at the end to sort of give this sort of nuance of well, he was supposed to be right back, but something happened. Something got in the middle. This sentence may also continue. That doesn't really matter here, though. We could continue this sentence, but we could also not. We don't have to. Here you go. Okay, let me just open that for later. It'll definitely be interesting to go through that. So here we just have kare, he wa. So he is the topic, right? Topic. I'll mark it with a T. すぐ戻るはずだが. 戻る means to come back. So he's supposed to be right back, but he's not here. So there's sort of like this implied continuation here. This sentence could continue, however. So yeah, 彼はすぐ戻るはずだがまだ戻ってない. Something like that. He was supposed to be right back, but he's still not back. So again, we are trying to express our strong, sorry, this is the hazu over here. We're trying to express our strong assumption. We made a pretty strong assumption about the fact that he was supposed to be right back, right? All right, let's look at some examples with negatives, okay? This is kind of where it gets a little bit more exciting. Sorry, I should have deleted this translation down here as well, but I forgot. So there's some interesting things that you can do with hazu and some like negatives. For example, we could use this beginning of the sentence, 彼はすぐ戻る. He will come right back. And then we'll add hazu. And now I will add ganai, okay? Ganai. And you can add a this here if you want to, but you don't have to. Sorry to disturb the flow, but saying まだ戻らなかった and まだ戻ってない be different. I personally would say まだ戻ってない, but まだ戻らなかった 戻らなかった. That's まだ戻らなかった. Wait, does that make sense? 戻らなかった would imply that it's an action that's finished. He has not returned. まだ still not. I would have to think about it, but in my mind, まだ戻らなかった sounds very weird. まだ戻ってない sounds much better. There's something weird there with the ongoingness of it, or with the continuity of the action, because 戻らなかった implies this sort of finality, that it's finished, whereas まだ means that it's like ongoing. Like, I have to think about it. I don't want to go off the rails too much, but it sounds wrong to me to say まだ戻らなかった. まだ戻ってない. まだ戻らなかった. Maybe it's not wrong, but I would definitely say まだ戻ってない, to be honest. And like, just off the top of my head, I would definitely say that one. So for this sentence, you can add this, はずがないです. So if you want to make it polite, that's fine. You can add this. Just remember that you're not supposed to add da after nai like that. So if you do want to emphasize it, you can use either no da or nda. Okay, we've talked about like where you can attach which copulas in the past. So if you don't remember that, there's surely somewhere a lesson about this. Maybe when we talked about no or something. I've done too many lessons now. I'm losing track. But that's not the point today. So I will leave it here and just have it a sort of casual sentence here, or rather, at least it's not super polite, right? So what does this mean? はずがない. So hazuganai is actually a cool one, and you'll see this one a lot. It's basically saying like the opposite, right? This hazuganai is basically saying like there's no way. There is no way. There's no way. It's impossible. No way, impossible. Naides, but Japanese is evolving. Yes, you can. Hazu ga arimasen works too. It sounds a little bit more formal in modern Japanese. Naides is becoming super common these days. Just in like casual conversation. To the point where no one is gonna tell you that it's wrong. Like no native speaker will ever tell you like naides is wrong. Well, at least they won't be like you shouldn't say it, because everyone does say it. Maybe if they're like really stingy about that stuff, I'm not sure, or they're older, maybe they will say like, oh, you're not supposed to say that, but you know, the times they are changing. So basically, by adding hazu ga nai instead of just hazu, you can say there's no way. So it's like saying like hazu being it's supposed to, but then hazu ga nai is basically saying like that hazu, that supposedness of it does not exist, right? We cannot suppose it. It's impossible. There's no way. So 彼はすぐ戻るはずがない. There is no way that he'll return right away. Okay? There is no way that he will return immediately. Okay? はずがない means there is no way. And now let's also look at sort of let's look at an extension of that, basically. So I leave hazu ga nai, okay, but what I will do is I will turn modoru also into its negative. Ga arimasen and not nai desu. My brain goes, whoa, they know stuff and things. I mean, that's not really it, right? It's just that arimasen is mostly used in more formal situations, whereas nai desu is mostly used in like more casual situations. 間違いだと言ったのに、それはどうかな。それはどうなんでしょうね。What even is a mistake? So now what I'll do, I'll turn the verb negative too. 戻らないはずがない. Okay, so now we have double negatives. That's everyone's favorite topic. We're still using this firms. You're not that casual yet. Yeah, that's true. You're not that casual. But also, well, casual, like, formality versus politeness is a subject for another lesson. I don't want to go too deep into it here. Talked about it many times. So, 彼はすぐ戻らないはずがない. Now we have our double negative. I feel like the double negatives is where a lot of people get confused, but worry not. It's not that bad. So here are two negatives. ないはずがない, right? We have a double negative. But what is actually going on here? Well, we can just sort of break it down into its pieces. So we have this 戻らない, which is, you know, not coming back. Not coming back. And then we have はずがない, which we just learned earlier, right? はずがない, which means it's impossible, there is no way. Sticky keys? そんなはずがない! I need to disable sticky keys. And はずがない just means like impossible, right? So it actually doesn't change the meaning of the parts at all. So 彼はすぐ戻らないはずがない. Okay, well, it's impossible that he's not coming back right away. So what does that mean? It means that, well, of course he's gonna come back right away, right? It'd be impossible for him not to come back right away. That's what it means. So you can just sort of split it into parts in your brain. The more you hear this, the less you'll have to think about it, right? Yeah, so basically the double negative in this case will kind of turn into a positive. So we have negative, negative, but in total, it kind of turns into this saying the negative thing is impossible must imply that the positive is the only option, right? It's kind of like the principle of elimination or whatever. Like by elimination, right? You say like, well, if everything negative is excluded, like if this is impossible, we're only left with the positive, right? That's basically it. And that's exactly what happens here as well. 彼はすぐ戻らないはずがない. There's no way he wouldn't come back right away. So two wrongs make a right. Exactly. There you go. We have solved ethics. Not always. Okay, so double negatives can be a bit tricky, but in this case, that is how it works. With hazu ga nai or nai hazu ga nai, that is basically always how it works. Let's do another example with nai hazu ga nai, since this is like the most complex thing that you'll most likely see with hazu. I'll use an e adjective this time. Something like アイスが美味しくないはずがない。There you go. アイスが美味しくないはずがない。Which, you know, if you have been paying attention, then you should know that 美味しい means delicious, because I use that one all the time. That's for some reason turned into my favorite e adjective to use as an example. Means delicious. 美味しくない means not delicious. はずがない, it cannot be, right? So, it basically means there is no way ice cream can't be delicious. There's no way ice cream isn't delicious, right? So maybe someone who's very fanatic about ice cream would say this. They would be like, you know, like, there's no way that ice cream couldn't be tasty. It has to be tasty. It just absolutely must be tasty. It always is. That's kind of that thing. So maybe you're eating ice cream and you're saying, well, this is not very good. And they're just in disbelief. They just won't believe you. They're like, no, there's no way. It has to be. That wasabi flavored one, I have not. Sushi no suki dewa nai kata ga inai hatsu ga nai. There you go. That would be impossible, wouldn't it? So that's hazu. Let me scroll through if they have anything here that needs to be mentioned specifically, but I don't think so. Hazu is pretty straightforward, and you'll see Becky is not much worse. It is also pretty straightforward, luckily. Wasabi flavored ice cream. That sounds nice. That does sound nice. So let us look at Becky next, except if you have any urgent questions about hazu, or maybe something that is unclear, then you can do that now while I scroll this down, and then we can look at this one here. Okay. Hazu. Be a verb back in the old Japanese. Yeah, beku. You still sometimes hear like beku or beshi and stuff like that. It's all like classical leftovers. Though beshi is very uncommon. Beshi generally being the rentai-kei, if I remember correctly. In general, I think shi used to be rentai. Erabarishi. Where are we? Okay, yeah, for now, I will leave this text box here, but I'll just get rid of the content, so I don't have to make a new one, because I'm lazy. We'll just move it down here for now. Look at that. So yeah, Tenten is right. Becky is essentially sort of the nominalized form of beku. If you look up beku, you should still see it, as in like supposed to or ought to. So if we look up beku, we should probably still find like, yeah, there you go. Purpose, must, should. That's basically it. I'm gonna start, and I didn't think I've ever seen it since. It's not very common, to be honest. Number 2, but not the toilet related one. Becky. Today we're mostly gonna Beshi is shushi. Beku is rentai-kei. Well, there you go. We're gonna talk about Becky. Why do I... Okay. There, Becky. Beku is renyo. Okay. Becky is rentai. The more you know. Alright, that's all nice. It's very nice. So Becky generally is used for saying, first of all, let me say that Becky is not as common as hazu. It's generally something that is used more in like formal or serious contexts. It basically expresses what you ought to do, like something you have to do. It's for obligation. 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 That's how you spell that. Nice. For oughts. I don't know if ought is too fancy of a word to use, but for oughts, or for, you know, you should. You should do this. You are obligated, or you should. You're better off doing this. Should. Okay? Here we go. Goes for 0. Okay. That's basically how Becky is used. Becky, again, it has a pretty like severe tone. Like it sounds like you're really like talking about what someone's obligation is, what they are, you know, supposed to do. So Becky is a bit simpler in terms of what it attaches to. Becky only ever attaches to the sentence ending forms of verbs. So in this case, we can have things like past tense or dictionary form or something like that. Does Becky have a moral implication? Compare with nasai. I'm not sure if nasai has at least I've never thought about it like that. But I would say if any verb has a moral implication or a moral sort of relationship, then it may be Becky. Like Becky is the closest I can think of to saying to making an ought statement. I'm saying nasai doesn't have a moral. Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I have not heard. I haven't seen someone use the word like moral implication, but definitely I would argue that Becky is the closest you get to making like sort of these prescriptive statements, like what one ought to do. And in that sense, you can probably talk about morals using Becky pretty easily, right? So I would say yes, it can be used for that. And in the example sentences, we even have an example of that. So we'll actually see that. Becky is a little bit simpler because all it does is it attaches to sentence ending forms of verbs. So basically you have just verb plus Becky. You have verb ta, right? Verb ta or da plus Becky, which would be like a sentence ending form. You have like nai, verb nai, and Becky, etc. Right? All of these sort of sentence ending forms work just fine with Becky. That's all nice and good. By the way, I should mention this now. For hazu, you can also add hazu to past tense verbs, okay, and negative past tense. Just so we've covered everything. I kind of forgot to mention that, but the meaning doesn't change if it's past tense. Then it just means it was supposed to be here, right? Like something like konakatta hazu da, right? Konakatta hazu da. You were not supposed to come. I didn't think you would come to this party, for example, right? このパーティーに来なかった、ここに来なかったはずだ。ここに来なかったはずだ。Like, wait, you weren't supposed to come here. Something like that. Sort of this, looking at the action that was supposed to happen. Sort of, if it's already happened, then we can use a past tense there as well. And for Becky, all that. Now, Becky does not generally attach to nouns. Like Becky, well, I say generally, Becky does not attach to nouns or adjectives or e-adjectives. There is no such thing as like oishii Becky, because generally Becky has to do with implying some obligation, and we can't really imply an obligation to have a trait, right? We can't say it ought to be delicious, something like that, right? Like it just doesn't work like that. Not with Becky, at least. Though in English you can say ought to be delicious, but this is not how Becky is used, okay? It's just attached to actions, to verbs. So yeah, with that, let's look at examples to make this a little bit more clear. Nani o subeki ka? Yeah, I like the abbreviation here. Well, it's not as much an abbreviation than it is. It's like suru subeki. So that's a good thing to mention. For suru, you actually end up with subeki, which is, it looks like it's an abbreviation, but it's really not. It's just that in classical Japanese, I think the verb just used to be su only, and that was its. Well, I would assume it was its shusuke or something like that. I'm not super certain about this, but I think from classical Japanese, this just used to be the way you would do this, like surubeki. Now, I think you can say the Su was doing her back in class. Yes, so I'm apparently right. The verb just used to be Su. Now, in modern use, you can say surubeki and you'll be fine. Like, people do say that. It's maybe not like... Again, it's a little bit like the nidus sort of logic here. You might hear people say it, and it's... Honestly, I'd say it's probably fine. I don't think anyone's gonna spank you for it. Certainly not me. But do note that subeki may be considered more correct in some situations, and if you ever have to like write an essay, you would probably be expected to use subeki and not surubeki. But yeah, that's a shame. Well, I can if you want to, but you'll probably have to pay for a plane ticket, and I don't even know if planes go yet. But you know. So let's now really look at some examples here. Okay. Okay. Sure. This is okay. I like the sentence. This is very fancy. もっとご両親を敬うべきです。敬うべきです。Once again, Becky, by the way, acts essentially like a noun, more or less. So you can also just add this at the end of it. Examples are my jam. Yes. Becky. So here we have a really fancy word, uyamau. Uyamau means to respect, okay, to pay respect. You may recognize this kanji from the one in keigo, if I'm correct. Yeah, I am correct, right? Yeah, there you go. So means to respect. F-suru is modern Japanese. F-suru. For F's sake. Motto go ryoshin. So here we have ryoshin, parents. Ryoshin uyamau. Uyamau. Okay, which means to respect. To respect. So what does this mean? Motto go ryoshin wo uyamau beki desu. Becky, you are supposed to. You ought to. Okay, so what ought you do? It's a very fancy way of saying that. What do you have to do? What is this person saying that you're supposed to do? Well, you're supposed to respect your parents more, right? You ought to be more respectful to your parents. For example, right? Motto go ryoshin wo uyamau beki desu. So you ought to be more respectful towards your parents. I purposefully use the word ought a lot. If English is not your first language, I don't know how common. I mean, I know ought isn't very common. It's common enough, but it's also like fancy enough that people might be confused by it. I do kind of use it on purpose to sort of hammer the point home of how strict this sounds, this Becky sort of thing. You're not gonna hear this much in just like every casual situation. It is really more of a stern term. It's sort of it ain't uncommon. Yeah, I wouldn't say it is, but it's also like maybe not the first word most people learn. But it's mostly, my usage of it is mostly to hammer home that Becky is mostly used in contexts where you're really making very strong statements and you're being very, very serious, and it's maybe a little bit more formal or something like that. Now, that being said, I've been recovering from a cold. Oh no! That's okay, Beth. That's why these are recorded, aren't they? Now, that being said, you might still see Becky used jokingly, as everything is. Everything that is like serious or formal or whatever can be used sort of sarcastically to make a joke. So if someone says like, oh, you're supposed to do this, they may be mockingly use Becky in that regard as well. But that's just generally true. I don't think there's any any like thing that isn't part of formal language that cannot be used to sort of have a mocking tone either. That seems to just be true in most languages when we want to make fun of formality. So do keep that in mind. So here's this example. Let's look at like one or two more examples of this. As far as Becky is concerned, there is no like like this nai hazu ga nai. There's no this like hazu ga nai was like this extra structure basically where we added the nai. Oh, my followers. Thank you. Hey. Shaman Main, thanks for the follow. Follow, arigatou gozaimasu. My alerts are scuffed. Sorry about that, but yeah. My parents is loser. Oh no. That is unfortunate. Wait, let me just quickly reset this transform and then... Thank you, saw you in the Discord server. Oh, well, there you go. Probably do this like that. All right, that should do. Sorry, little distraction there. Let's look at another example of Becky. Like I said, there is no like specific extra thing. One thing you might have would be like nai Becky, right? Which we talked about earlier. You can attach it to nai. Then it just means that you ought to not do something. What you generally won't have is, let me think. Becky janai. Generally, I don't think you have like negative after the Becky that much. But it, you know, it could happen. Oh, here would be one example with that. So let's just see. Maybe we can have a better idea. What are they using here? 彼女をI guess this would be 軽視, right? 彼女軽視すべきではない. Oh, okay. There you go. I guess, yeah, べきではない, べきじゃない would sort of imply that make sure not to do that, but yeah. But you can Becky someone, but so it's fine to use Becky with yourself, but not to act with others. It depends on sort of what position you have relative to them, right? Is this Karumi or Keishi? I'm not sure. I'll type both. Is it Karumi? No, it's probably Keishi. Right? Yeah, there you go. Okay. 彼女を軽視すべきではない。軽視すべきではない。Challenges to elders. Well, yeah, you probably come across as very rude. But then again, you know, just being old doesn't make you right. Sometimes, you know, old people also need to be told that they're wrong. It's okay. It's okay to be wrong, but, you know. 彼女を軽視。軽視 means to look, to underestimate someone or to take someone lightly. 軽視すべきではない. So here's an interesting example with, where are we? べきではない. What this basically means is, you shouldn't take her lightly, right? Like, you shouldn't take her lightly. Lightly. You shouldn't take her lightly. So let's kind of analyze why this negative is in the place it is. I found 人を見た目で判断するべきじゃない. Yeah, there you go. I think I can now think of where you would use Becky with that negative afterwards. So basically, let's compare, right? What would be the difference between having the negative here with Becky de wa nai or having it here with the action itself, right? So what's the difference? And generally the difference is in what you're saying. So here is like, you shouldn't do the thing, right? So if you're not supposed to do the thing, then you have to say Becky de wa nai or Becky janai. Okay, so if the action here is what you are not supposed to do, then the negative is here. If we had the negative with here, like 軽視しないべき, then we are saying that you should do the negative thing. So if we had, and let me type that out for clarity, okay? I'll type it out for clarity. べき しない 軽視しないべき. So basically, and this, like, thinking about purely the meaning, I don't think it'd be all that different, but it's just kind of like, I suppose the nuance is a little different. Now it's more like saying you should, like you should. Now it's basically saying you should do something, but what you should do is not this. So you should not to take her lightly. Does that make sense? It's kind of weird, but now we're saying that you have to do something, but what you have to do is just the negative of this, which again, that's kind of subtle, but yeah. So now I probably translate this to as what would we translate? You must not to take her lightly. It's basically this. It's very hard to translate this. It's very hard to translate it so that it comes across. Also, in this case, the difference isn't all that big. But it's basically just saying like either you should do something or you shouldn't, and what you should or shouldn't do can be a positive or a negative action, and that's basically how it works. So for example, in Waka Waka's case, right? 人を見た目で判断するべきじゃない. You shouldn't or you mustn't discriminate people by their looks, or you mustn't judge. Sorry, not judge. You mustn't not discriminate. You mustn't judge people by their looks. So we're talking about something you mustn't do rather than something you must do. 判断しないべき. So, but you can also say 人を判断しないべき. You are supposed to not judge people. Again, this is kind of similar. I would argue we're in the territory of having the good old two different ways of saying the same thing, basically. I don't think there's a large sort of difference in what we're saying here. So yeah, I would categorize this, upon thinking about it, I would categorize this as the sort of like two different ways of saying the same thing. Should not eat versus should not eat. Yeah, it's essentially the same thing. Like you end up with like the same conclusion, basically. If that makes sense. So there you go. Okay, here's a past tense sentence that we can look at as well. So for example, this one here would be 喧嘩すべきではなかった。喧嘩すべきではなかった. So what does this mean? Can you think of an example where the meaning would change? Not off the top of my head. I'm trying to think, but maybe not really. It probably depends on the situation. Maybe you could have verbs, you could have actions that are inherently negative, but they're not grammatically negative. Maybe to like curse someone, like nonoshiru, right? But nonoshiru is like a negative thing, but it's a positive in the grammar sense. So in that case, you would obviously use like nonoshiru beki de wa nai. You are not supposed to curse people or curse at people. But that's not, grammatically speaking, that is a positive action. So this probably doesn't really count. But yeah, you can come back if something comes to you. Yeah, I don't think, off the top of my head, I don't think there'd be like a significant difference there. But yeah. Here, what is this one, right? So, 喧嘩すべきじゃない. Wait, すべき is するべき. Yes, すべき is するべき. すべき arguably maybe like the correct way of doing it, but when you do するべき, like I said, no one will get that angry at you. It's not like ultra wrong. It's basically accepted. 喧嘩. 喧嘩 means fight, so get into a fight. 喧嘩すべきではなかった. So here we have a past tense negative. So this is past negative. So what does this mean? Like, it means I shouldn't have argued, right? I shouldn't have fought, or I shouldn't have argued. This is sort of like expressing reflection. Like you're reflecting on your actions and you regret them. Shouldn't have argued. We can use argue here. We could also use fight. It depends on the context. Kenka can mean an actual fight. It can mean just an argument. It's, yeah. I shouldn't have argued. Sorry, there's a D here that I'm missing. Shouldn't have argued. I'll put it normal. I'll put it just normal, full stop. I shouldn't have argued. So here we can sort of show reflection. We can be like, well, in hindsight, I was not supposed to do that. I recognize now that that was not the right thing to do. Basically, Becky de wa nakatta. I should not have done that. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. Basically, there you go. There you go. Yes. Once again, you do, maybe you have noticed that these examples here did use things like de wa nai and de wa nakatta, right? Instead of janai. That is not necessary, but it kind of comes with the territory of having something that is more akin to formal language. So in formal or like strict situations, sort of the tone of dewanai comes across a little bit more strict, a little bit more formal, rather than janai. That is not to say that janai is wrong. It's not. You can say kenka subeki janakatta. That is fine. Janakatta. That is fine. It means the same thing. It sounds a little less formal. I can't like give you numbers on this. I would say that it's probably just kind of situational. I don't think like either one would be always better. It's just sort of this formality thing. But yeah, Becky is definitely something where you might see this like Becky dewanai. You definitely might see forms like these, right? Or dewa nakatta. Dewa arimasen deshita would be like the most formal version of that, I guess. So that's just something to point out. Like I said, this kind of comes with the territory. You will also see bekida, right? We might have had an example of bekida, but I just want to make sure to point it out again. You will see the copula, and then in less formal things or in general, the copula da can often also be left out. It's sort of implied though. Grammatically speaking, you do need something here. You do need some sort of like verb or copula thing. Well, usually copula, not usually anything other than that. So you do need kind of a verb here, or a copula. Grammatically speaking, of course it is sometimes left out, but it's kind of implied. Even if it's not there, it's kind of there. Hi, I just got here. When you use Becky, is like verb stem Becky, or how to use it? No, Becky attaches to so-called sentence ending forms. That's like the best name I have for them. Shusuke. Those are forms that are basic. Those are forms, like the name says, that can stand at the end of a sentence. So that includes dictionary form. That includes things like teiru, sort of conjugated forms. That includes things like past tense and negative tenses, all of that. I guess negative is a tense. Is negative a tense? Whatever. But you know what I mean. Sentence ending forms. The reason you might think that it is attached to stems is because the verb we're using here is suru. And for suru, it's sort of this extra thing. Like suru turns into subeki. Hey, Gitsom, thank you for 2 months. Look at me, there's me failing. Oh gosh. Becky. Arigato, 2 kagetsu. Thank you. Suru turns into subeki. Now, you can say surubeki. That is okay. It's just, officially, it's subeki. That's more like a leftover. We talked about this earlier. It's basically a leftover from classical Japanese. As there are some things are leftovers from older ways of how the language used to work. In general, though, most other verbs, or all other verbs, you will just see like something like, you know, tsuku, or I don't know, like taberu beki, right? Just the normal forms. Tabenai beki. All of that is just very standard sort of sentence ending forms that you can use. All right. That is that. Let's see. Are there questions? Let me just see what they have here. Okay, this is another thing here that they're noting on Imabi that I could bring up. So apparently a lot of native speakers believe or will say that nai beki would be grammatically incorrect, but it is used. Like the fact of the matter is, I'm pretty sure I've heard it. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, maybe you're not supposed to say it, but like people definitely say it, so you should be fine. It goes back to this discussion of what we had, like nai beki or beki dewanai. I think you're gonna be fine with either one. But yeah, it does say here that many still would argue that nai beki may be grammatically incorrect. But yeah, you can avoid it if you want, and then you'll probably be on the safer side. So there we go. I guess that's the final sort of thing I'll say about nai beki versus beki dewanai. So you can default to beki dewanai. Grammatically speaking, if we just look at how they work together, then it should be fine. But yeah. earlier you went over the should do as opposed to should not before I got here. Yes, well, Becky, we had two, we had examples for both. We had Becky de wa nai, should not, must not do something, and just Becky, which means should or must to do something. Again, Becky is more for like, would be kind of like inakia ikenai. Yeah, so the difference between Becky and the must sort of conjugations, like nakute wa naranai and nakute wa ikenai and stuff like that, is that Becky is more like expressing an obligation. It's often also kind of subjective. It's like what you think someone is supposed to do. It's not like a necessity, but it is an obligation. It is like necessitated via obligation or via moral, via moral imperative or whatever. So you would say, like, you would maybe say something like, 人を殺すべきではない. Like you ought not kill people because it's something that you think you are obligated not to do. You can also say 人を殺してはいけない, right? You must not kill people, but the sort of the tone of it is a little different. And then also the other thing is that Becky is quite formal and stiff, like I mentioned this before. It's more of like this, like a stiff sort of formal kind of word. Put winter tires on when winter is imminent. Yeah, these are all things where you could use Becky. Could you explain why this is translated without should? 私にはするべき仕事がたくさんある. I have so much work to do. Well, that's just a translation choice. You could have translated this as there is so much work that I should do. That would be the same meaning. Like, I have so much work to do. Like, when we say I have work to do, we do imply that it is actually something we have to do, right? So, but yeah. Shall not. Old-fashioned or very old would probably use shall not. It's like the Bible, thou shalt not kill. Yeah, that is true. You could also sort of, using Becky can be akin to using shall. So yeah, basically that's that. Wait, I didn't want to put a text box. No! Be gone, text box. You are not welcome. Oh, wrong keyboard. Alright, I will clear this up. That was Becky and Hazu, which is something I promised to talk about. So I hope that from now on, when we have Becky and Hazu, we will know exactly how they work, more or less. You know, more or less. If you want to read some more, I have one Imabi article here that I used for reference today, and then there's also this article here that I used for reference. You can check these out, feel free. Okay, well, I will return to this view. Cha-chang! Look, I'm all bigly. I just want to say thanks for the educational stream. I have to go check out the rest of the stream later. Thank you, Switch. Thank you for watching. Take care. Yes. I think that is all we're going to do for the lesson today. And after this, I don't actually know what we're going to do. Can you go over Hazu again? Yes, but I will end the recording first because I've gone over it for the recording, so I don't want to have it in there twice. For the stream, I don't really mind I don't really mind going over it again. So, thank you for watching if you're watching the recording. I'll see you in the next lesson, which is next Wednesday. Probably. Most likely.